stand here. Big panel audience. My water there. I might knock it over. Thank you. Thanks, Lizzie, for the invitation to come down and speak. I made it. I had to come from the city and I was like, oh, I'll just get an Uber because it's too stressful. I don't know where I'm going. But I made it. And it's very hot here. Not this hot in Sydney at the moment. So yes, I work at the State Library of New South Wales and I run this little innovation experimental lab called the DX Lab. This is how we kind of roll on Twitter. We don't have a separate Twitter account. We just use the State Library's Twitter account and use a hashtag whenever we promote the work that we do. We just felt that having a separate Twitter account for the DX Lab would have a minimal audience as opposed to like a state library-wide, you know, many thousands of people on social media. So we are technically the first purely experimental innovation lab within a cultural heritage organisation in Australia. We're kind of modelled a little bit off what the New York Public Library was doing with their labs before they closed. The British Library have a lab, which is not doing business as usual. So we don't run the State Library core website. We don't run the systems or the kind of digital infrastructure that is ongoing business. So we're there to do research. This is my new website, which is meant to go live today, but it will go live tomorrow. Notice the spelling mistake. That was actually our state librarian who suggested we have sort of a little bit of a keep you on your toes moment there. We publish everything that we do here. So we publish our experiments, we publish the blog posts around the making of everything that we do, and if we've got code, we'll put it up. So this new website will actually have all those things linked together, whereas our old website was sort of just more a blogging platform. But in the 3 years we've been around, we've kind of we've outgrown our WordPress blog. So that's going live tomorrow, hopefully. We're a small team actually. These are two developers I work with, Ka Ho Chung on the top, and this is Luke Durnley on the bottom doing some amazing code. But we're a library-wide team, so whenever we do a project, it will involve potentially curators, it will involve the exhibitions team, it could involve a number of different people across the organisation. So we try not to be the quirky kids on the side just publishing like, you know, tech for the sake of tech. We kind of embed into the library, but we are a small kind of unit. And if we need to bring in people to work with us on specific things, we will do some short-term contracts or work with creative agencies. So we're sort of a partnership model. So we look at collaboration as well as work that we do. So I guess with the library, you know, you get to that stage where it's mass digitisation coming out, but it's also at this point where we want to inspire people to actually use our stuff, because it can be incredibly hard to find when you look at look through catalogues, or if you don't know what you're looking for. So we're here to really kind of push some of those boundaries and test some of those theories around, you know, digital innovation, the latest technologies, but always with our collections in mind. So our collections, our data, and working with kind of meaningful library projects. This clicker's a little bit slow. Oh, sorry, there's our inspiration, the British Library Labs and the New York Public Library Labs, which I talked about. Why does a library need a lab? Well, I mean, we feel that, you know, a library is even more important these days than ever before. It's a safe place for people to come, where people want to be around face-to-face communications, events, exhibitions, and we're a place of learning and research. So we're in a perfect place to kind of have this innovation lab and working with our collections to push some of the boundaries so that people actually know, you know, we're more than just a physical space where you can come and just research. There was a report that came out, I think it was 2004, which was critical of the GLAM sector, the Gallery, Library, Archives and Museum sector, saying that digital teams and digital innovation is at the periphery. It's not being embedded into the core of the organisation. And I think that's something that we've tried to do in the lab, is actually, model it into trying to be core and doing the important stuff, as well as the experimental stuff that's quick and dirty, really. So at our library, we're fortunate to have received some government funding for digitisation. So we have a mass digitisation program running at the moment over 10 years. So we have a lot of content. We're like, where do we start? We're like kids in a candy store. There is so much data being churned through our library daily. With over 10 million digitised items, it's growing at such a rapid rate. So, we really need to be using our material in innovative ways so that we can actually inspire others to hopefully use this material, because it's the public's collection. It's being digitised for the people of New South Wales, but also Australia and beyond. And we want people to use our collections. We want to promote the work that is being done. We've got a hashtag, so we can hopefully try and publish the works that others are doing with our collections as well. So when we first got together, we thought we'd live by some design principles. I think they're sort of fairly obvious, really. It's about being in this prototyping space, to really kind of learn through the method of design thinking. We might not necessarily know what the outcome is, but I'm sure part of what the SensiLab is here. It's about the process of uncovering and learning as you go through that design thinking process. So we're in this lovely kind of constant prototyping space. We can not necessarily overbake things, publish things that are really experimental and look like they're not finished. That's okay, and we talk about that. So you don't have to have this website that is polished to the end of its life, and 3 years down the track you've made a website that, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of nice to publish things really quickly and to learn from them. So these are our, keeping everything really open. And this was actually something that the staff came up with, that they wanted the lab to be. And surprise was this really nice one that came out. It was like, we want you to have fun and we want you to have this element of surprise around the work that you do, which I thought was really nice. So there are our values. Our design process is, in a way, quite typical of a creative agency. Very much the David Newman cycle of the mess. We don't necessarily know where we're going, but we get to a point where we do have to streamline and focus and build the thing that we say we're going to build. So it's not like that all the time. But that is an incredibly fun place to be in at times. But you have to take people along with you. So it can be hard for people, who've worked in a government organisation to kind of go down not actually knowing what the outcome is. So that design process can be quite tricky. But it is changing the way that the library thinks about its processes. Just kind of a typical design process mapping, spend a lot of time on research, and we do a lot of prototypes, which I imagine would happen a lot here. And it's about the prototype, uncovering those things, and it's about pivoting as well. So for us, it's about learning from those prototypes to then shift and go, you know what, this is so cool, but it's actually not, it's not going to be the thing that we're going to make. We need to go that way. And so recognising when you need to pivot. So now I'm just going to show you some of the experiments that we've done over the past few years. This is our big one that we started when we launched, actually. We worked with a creative agency because it was a very small team. It was me, and we needed to launch for Remix, and I wanted to demonstrate an experiment with when we launched to say this is the kind of thing that we'd be doing. So Loom started as a data visualization project. We wanted to work with the collection to showcase something completely different. And we wanted to challenge the catalogue notion of search. Like, what would it be like to go through our collection with no search function? So that you stumble across, you have this serendipitous relationship with the items that could be based on metadata. So quite a challenge for the concept of removing search from our catalogues. What would that look like? We've got lots of people who research the collections online each year looking for the things they may know in a sort of item by item relationship return. And we kind of wanted to challenge that idea of that one-to-one relationship return. So we started with this particular phase, which we call the loose leaf phase. And what this is it's sped up here for screencast purposes, but it's built in WebGL, and it's basically a timeline. You have no search, you have a date, you have an item that you can enhance and click on, and it will bring up all the metadata that's associated, well, not all of it, but just the basic metadata that's associated with that file. And then if you choose to dig deeper, you can look at the topics and tags that are related to that particular item and keep kind of browsing through the whole collection this way. You can star and favourite your particular, the ones that you can go back to that. So we thought that was kind of an interesting way of looking at a very specific part of our collection, which was around 3,500 images around the Sydney CBD. We had to limit it because we were working in GL. We weren't sure if we were going to do a live call via an API. But then as we got to that stage, well, what we really want to demonstrate is another way of looking at exactly the same data that you looked at in the first phase, but through a different lens. So this was kind of the main aim, was really about contextualised information, but showing me some possibility. So this particular phase is all around location. Again, it's in WebGL. It's exactly the same metadata that we're working with. It's looking at the relationships between what's digitised in the collection and what is left to be digitised through these specific location mounds. So if you click into one of them, it'll actually show you content that is part of that local area. So you can see here there's a little bit left to digitise of that particular amount of content. Again, you can get to the images at the item by item level, but it's taking you to the collection from the bird's eye view rather than from your search and the one-to-one relationship. So this was quite unexpected for us, and we think that this is actually one of the tools that we would love to put back into the catalogue, is enabling people to actually find like material based on location. It's such a sort of obvious thing to do, you know, to go, you're researching a location, you go straight to the location. So we're looking at how SensiLab projects transition into like a business as usual approach. And then we decided that we wanted to have a third lens into, so 3 different lenses into the same data. So when we stripped back the data from this particular content, it looks like this. And this is actually a prototype. So that was built by a creative agency. And it was never meant to be published. It was just like, this is what we're working with. This is what the data looks like. And you can drill down into any of these tags and topics. You can go to the Trove link, which is out of the National Library, and you can get published newspapers, There's pictures, map, whatever, in relation to that particular topic. So we actually just ended up publishing this as a tool anyway. So, trying to keep everything as open as possible as when we learn things for our users. So then we took this particular data and turned it into little squares in space, as you do, which was like, it's very esoteric, it's a bit weird, but I think we'll go with this. We'll kind of look at how do we turn that sort of very dry data into something that's visual. And we ended up having these, I guess, particles. Again, everything's time-based. So these are actually all the pieces of metadata in WebGL based on location and time. And you can drill down and start to research from a completely different perspective again. So you might choose one of those particular particles from that year and work out, well, why do you have so much content in cities and towns? Go into that particular topic, look at the content that's around that topic. You can go to the different locations and look at the different areas for that topic. You can drill down, get to the image, and do all the same stuff that you can in the other lenses. So we kind of finished this particular data visualization at that third phase. It exists on our website. It's available. All the code for what we've created is freely available in GitHub. And we've had some really interesting feedback from teachers and students around learning with this kind of visual way, with this material. So we need to learn how to progress that into making it into better tools for teachers and students, and also the broader public. So I guess from that experiment, we realised that we could look at the collection from that bird's eye view, which is very hard to get to in massive cultural heritage collections, and that those lenses can give us different ways to research, anyone to research into whatever they might be researching. Digitisation is shifting from just, making stuff available into context. It's not enough just to have all of this stuff available online. You have to kind of provide some context for it. So that particular one's called Loom. So check it out. Love to know what you think. Battery might be going a bit. So being a research lab, we also didn't want to sort of be the only ones that were making things. We wanted to kind of have this collaboration model. So it was really important for me to set up a fellowship. I did a lot of research around cultural heritage offering digital fellowships only, and there was not a lot out there. I don't know if anyone's applied grants and things like that with cultural heritage. There's very few. So we were fortunate foundation to set up the DXLab Fellowship, which is $30,000 to a creative technologist. And what we do is we open up and people pitch their ideas about what they'd like to research and experiment with our collection, and then we go through a panel process with some sort of peer people in the sector to come and judge, and then we award a fellowship. So it's a good, we felt 30,000 was a good kind of chunk of money to be serious about this. And this was the results of our first, it's called Unstacked by Alyssa Lee and Adam Hinshaw. And they produced a time-based visualization of what our users are doing researching with the collection online. But it wasn't just the search, it was the item that they were selecting. And this is kind of sped up for the purposes of screencast. But this is a completely different lens into our catalogue. This is what the people of generally New South Wales are doing. So it's a curation of our collection through our users, our researchers, the core of why the library exists really, and it's on display in real time. So it's absolutely fascinating to see what people are researching, when they're researching it, what the busy times are, what the responsive nature is. Like, we realised that the Australian Open was on because we were like, it was January and we're getting all these tennis, like really old tennis shots coming through, and we're like, oh, someone's searching tennis. Oh, must be because the Open's on. So there's this really nice kind of responsive to what's actually happening. So we're really thrilled with this particular interface, and we're actually going to go, we've commissioned them after this to do a little hacked up version of a microfiche. So you can actually physically come into our, we're not sure where we're going to put it, probably in the reading room, and actually drive. It's got a projector in it, and you can actually experience the same thing but through a microfiche. So getting that nice mix between analogue and physical tech, really interesting, especially for our visitors on site. Huzzah. That's what 3 days worth of our visitors searching the collection looks like. It becomes like an artwork in itself, like a tapestry. Quite beautiful. So our next fellowship has just been awarded to a young creative technologist called Thomas Wing Evans, and he's pitched this project called 80 Hertz, and he's actually going to be looking at our collection and the sonification of the collection. So he's going to be researching how, whichever particular collection he chooses, what some of those relationships are, and what sounds might be created from a work, and then experience that physically in the library as well. So you're going into the collection from a completely unexpected way through sound. So stay tuned, he's doing some incredible work. This is a particular data set that we were working with our Indigenous Services team. It was language material collected around 1890 around Indigenous place names. It is debatable content, and our Indigenous Services Manager, Kirsten Thorpe, was really proactive in making this data set available so that we could get it out there so that the community could have some really good conversations around the veracity of the data. So what we felt we should do is something pretty special for NAIDOC. We worked with a creative agency out of Melbourne, actually Sandpit, to build this online interactive, but we also did a gallery version as well. And what it does is it actually scrapes the data for the Indigenous place name, puts the name and the place up in a very graphic way, but then scrapes the Google Street View API and takes you straight to that location. We wanted it to be really visual, very in your face around the language, so that we could start to have some debates around this data. So this has been a really interesting project, and it actually started with the same data being used for another that was a week-long digital drop-in, exactly the same data but shown in a different way. So all the content visualised in the folders, but also on a map with the place. This is part of our digital drop-in program, where we bring in a creative technologist for about a week or so. They come and spend time with us, with our collection, and then they just put their headphones on and code and build something really, really quickly, just to demonstrate this kind of quick idea iteration. And this is pretty amazing. This is a great way into this particular collection that you don't get on our catalogues, because those systems don't provide yet for those experiences. This is one of my passion projects at the moment, talking about physical tech and analogue tech. We have bought a late 80s, early 90s vending machine off, and we've built a collection surprise dispenser, which actually has a Twitter bot associated with it. So this physically sits in the foyer of my library, right next to the cafe. It dispenses little bits of the collection, such as a piece of paper in an envelope. At the bot, this is the team putting it together. You can tweet at a bot at Vending Library #suggest, and it'll read your previous 40 tweets. And based on what you're tweeting about, it will recommend one of the categories that our curators have got together. So each line is a category: maps, curios, quotes, animals, love, whatever. And it then recommends which keypad to press to get your collection surprise. So every day people are tweeting, getting surprises, or you can just use it. You can just put in 10 cents and get something out of it. So this has actually been a pilot project that we were going to try for just a few weeks. But what we didn't realise was that people love it. The teenagers love it. They're trying to crack into it and bang on the side. They know how to get the stuff out without paying. So we think that's a great sign of success. It's got little state library stamps on it, old school. But you talk to people and I say, do you know we have a collection? Do you know we have 7 floors of stacks underneath? Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they get. There's the teenagers. They love it. We've had them in and we're like, okay, and they're like, nah, we don't use Twitter. Oh, okay, you use Snapchat. Okay, we didn't do it in Snapchat. Sorry. And then they go, actually, I've got a Twitter account. You go, okay, you want to tweet at the bot? And they're like, all right, if I have to. And then one tweets at the bot, and then they're all tweeting at the bot. They've all got Twitter accounts, just don't use them. So that was really interesting. So we know they're coming to our, but they're not going to our exhibition. They're not really engaging with researching the collection either. So this, for us, is really important because they're tapping into knowing that they can come to the library, we have a collection, they can research the collection. So it's still in our foyer, actually. So we have to fill it up all the time. That's the bit we kind of didn't think about, is that physical tech takes 10 times as long, stuffing envelopes. We have parties to fill the stuff. This is a manuscript from our collection, which my developer, Ka Ho Chung, was just looking at one day, and he thought, I think I can do something with this. I think I can wrap that round and sphere it up. Oh, go back. Trying to play the video. So yeah, so all of a sudden you've got this, collection item that's flat that you never see how it was really intended to be viewed. And now it's accessible, and we've got a couple of them online. So again, it's like, how do we put that into the catalogues? How do we, create that experience for people? This is actually a work that was done by a creative technologist called Sarah Kenderdine, and it's actually at the new Wynyard Station train design. And so for us, this particular work is the 30-metre LED screen that 30,000 people pass through every single day. And so to take the collection out of the library, out of the context of where we are and down into the city is really important for us. So we partnered with her on this particular work. She did produce it, but we were just supplying the content really for her. But again, it's, we're not the ones making everything. We want others to make our stuff. So we just have to make it as easy as possible for people to do create things like that out wherever they want. It's quite beautiful. The screen is amazing. And Transport New South Wales have dedicated that screen to artistic works instead of advertising ongoing. So it's a really unique thing for us in GL colour palette. which is actually extracting all the colours out of the 300 works that we got from the cultural institutions. And you get to kind of start to play with colour, play with memory, because Ferdinand Bauer was an incredible artist who could recall colours without a colour palette. So he could recall up to 1,000 colours in his mind. And so it was really important for us to kind of play with that notion of trying to recall colour, play with colour before you actually get into the physical work. These are what the works look like. Beautiful watercolour pieces. We applied some, and pencil drawings. We applied like just a normal newspaper MediaTek bit of code to these sliders, which this content is perfect for. So we're really lucky to be able to work with this amazing content and bring it to life, because these works don't exist in the same location in the world. The pencil drawings are in Vienna and the watercolours are in London. So that's been a particularly big project for us. It wasn't necessarily your quick prototype, but sometimes we do bigger, longer projects, but we try and apply the SensiLab methodology and testing process to whatever we do. So this will be an ongoing website for as long as as long as it lives, really. This particular interface is sort of accompanying the Unstack from the SensiLab Fellowship, in that we've just scraped from Google Analytics the kind of almost real-time search terms that are coming out of the library. So it's really interesting. We've got all these different catalogues online, so we've colour-coded them, but this is actually what people are doing. So we don't know who, we don't know, we're not tracing anyone. We're just trying to look at what is actually going on in our library and how can we serve our readers better through knowing what is actually being researched. It's very lava lampy on a Friday afternoon when you put it up. And people put things in there to see if but I put this in, and yeah, so that trying to figure out where and what to do with it, where to put it. I kind of would love to put it on the library at night time, so that it's just like this. This is what happens here in this building that's shut down, and this is the DNA of the library, like the State Library of New South Wales. This is what happens. So stay tuned. This was actually part of a drop-in program. We try and do 2 a year, which is a $5,000 drop-in with a creative technologist who wants to come and work with a collection. This is the first one we did. She was from the Tweed Regional Museum. She's a curator, Erica Taylor. This is her collection at the top and the State Library's collection at the bottom, and she was interested in comparing main streets from a city and regional perspective. So we're pulling her collection in from eHive using the API, and then our collection as well. And then we were pulling in newspaper articles from Trove, so giving it a bit more context, a bit more sort of depth to the content. And it was really a time-based slice looking at city, regional, main street comparisons. So, kind of bespoke interface, which was really nice. And what we never anticipated that particular 2-week sprint would turn into a 4-month project for our in-galleries exhibition team. So after that, we built an in-gallery version using a touch interface with this massive projection, not quite as big as this, with content. So again, using that kind of same design, bit of recoding. So taking an experiment, but then taking it further. So pivoting into another realm. So this was actually for content from the Government Architect's Office, 200 years. And again, it was a timeline. What we did was we allowed people to experience without touching the interface, because a lot of our visitors don't necessarily want to touch computers. So they could actually just enjoy the animation, the opening up, but if you interacted with the computer, you could actually control it yourself and look at the captions. So we had 2 states, and I think for our visitors that worked quite well. It had a life, like it just lived. It was animated, which was nice. We're really keen on doing face-to-face events, so we try and do a couple of those a year as well. So we've run some UX challenges with a really diverse group of people. There's a bunch of people from UTS, students. We get beer and pizza and we sit around and we kind of work up a couple of real DXLab challenges that we're trying to solve in a kind of rapid UX way, which is really fun. They were the 2 particular projects that we were looking at. Ignore the budget, we made that up. But it was really fun, and we're trying to bring new audiences into the library to realise that the library isn't just a place to go in isolation and do your research in the reading room and leave. You know, it's more than that these days. So for us, bringing these audiences in who are young creative technologists or just, you know, designers or anyone to come and work with us is really important. And we published every single piece that was designed that night by our students, and some really cool ones. This one was particularly nice. I thought it was like a track your pizza kind of thing, but it was your library request book. So you could have like fun little messages going, oh, your particular item's just passed Captain Cook's journal, it's coming up to you soon. So, you know, there's some great ideas that came out of that particular evening, and it was only a couple of hours actually. We've looked at internal kind of systems that we've been able to improve upon. So through the process of replacing all the images in Flickr with the full high-res scans, because when initially Flickr account was started, they were 600 pixels wide. Not so good. So we were like, yeah, sure, we'll just use and replace them all. That'll take a week. No. So Luke, it was mainly due to the way that things were catalogued, and you've got the parent record and the child record, and it was all quite complicated, and we didn't have like for like. So Luke had to use image recognition technology to build a internal product for himself called the Album Resolver, and it would scrape the image out of Flickr and then match it to the image from the album to get the best guess, and then he would use that to then replace through the API into Flickr. So got there in the end, but what happened out of that process was that we realised that the staff weren't getting the high-res files that they needed quickly enough, that there was this other process that was happening within the library that we could actually improve upon. So we built Dairy, which is the Digit Archive Image Range Yielder. So now anyone in our library can just punch in the image ID and it will just find all the resolutions of that image very, very quickly. They tick which one they want, downloads to their desktop, and then deletes it after a certain amount of time. So through our experimental process, we've actually been able to improve upon the business of the library. So it's kind of, for me, that's a really important outcome of what we do, being able to see those spots where we can help and make it much better. So we track, you know, the usage is incredible. The amount of time we've saved the organisation is, you know, just through a simple tool like that. It's not flashy or anything. It just works. So yeah, we're looking at how that can actually be applied to something like the working with the digital channels team about high-res downloads for all users. So that's a very exciting time for the library to be, you know, pushing the catalogues and the interfaces into another sort of UX design phase. So I guess the things that we've learnt in the less than 3 years we've existed. is that, that prototyping space, like I said, is important. If you can create value and meaning for the library, first and foremost, then that's why we should exist. If we can impact on some of the business so that it makes it better for the students, better for the staff. Data is messy and it won't always do what you want. But, we have the data that we have to work with, so we find ways. For us, partnerships and collaboration are key. Inviting people to come and work with us is really important. We see some fantastic things coming out that are being created by others. So it's not just us always telling people, what shiny thing's been made. Again, pivot. Telling our audience it's an experiment can be very important. When people go to an esoteric homepage that's full of coloured tiles when they really just want to get straight to the content, can be challenging. So that's why we try and talk the language of experiment, but also publish as much as we can about the making of that particular work and the intentions, the failings, the aims. Our 2-week sprints often go beyond that, not intentionally, but that's what we work with. And really just to share as much as we can about what we find, share our code, and hopefully there's inspiration for others to actually use the State Library of New South Wales collection, our data, and our code. Apply your own data to the code that we've been able to make. So we're putting as much as we can into GitHub. I think that's it. Huzzah.
Does anyone have any questions? I guess. Thank Paula for SensiLab today and about wonderful experiments that you've been leading on in State Library of New South Wales.
Oh, thank you.
Very great.
Having me. Yeah.
Yes, if one does have any
I can hang around. Yeah.
Awesome.